I clicked it, Tom.
Oh man, this is crazy.
It's the old days when we pin it. You can't pin it anymore.
Yeah, we can't.
No. Well.
So then this show used to live on Facebook, on the Facebook group, and then Facebook said no more direct streaming into the group. So now we live on YouTube. This is our new home.
Huh.
So we still have friends from the group joining us, but this is the new home base of FFIB.
What does that stand for? I was gonna research it, but I figured it was a good question as we got started.
Well, Ben, I'm glad you asked. We have different terminology for used knives. So the most desirable kind is new in box. So if I'm buying a knife on the secondary, I want it new in box because that means it's still minty fresh. It hasn't been touched. It's still in the plastic. The next best would be a like new in box, which doesn't make any sense. It's like new, but it's not new. If it says like new, that means it isn't new. But we're going to not dwell on that. We're going to call it like new in box. So it might pass for new. After that, you have light user. But in between, we decided we needed something that was kind of in between. Like you buy a knife and you flick it for a week. Is it really new? Well, we're going to call that one FFIB, or finger flicked in box. So it's finger flicked and it comes with the box, and you can have it for the price that we agreed on. And so it became a pretty funny acronym, and it stuck. Now it's sort of the unofficial moniker of the club.
I love that. Also, every time I try to say the name of the club, it comes out like Paramilla 3 L2. Like I can't ever remember the stinking name of the club.
We just go with Millie Club.
That's easier.
If you're in a hurry, just say Millie Club.
But if I'm looking for it on the internet, it's like
that is true.
We tried to keep the continuity across platforms, but sometimes it didn't work out.
Millie Club, I like it. That's better.
We've tried, really thought about putting brain power into how do we shrink this, but it just is what it is at this point.
I can accept that.
Yeah.
We almost added the Mannix and the Native, and what else? I don't know, because we're looking for like a Gen 4 knife and a Gen 5 knife because we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the Millie 2 came along and ruined it. So it's just complicated.
I approve of the complication. I understand it. We're working on our Lander series right now at KNAFS, and I wanted to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on up. But the team just last week, we were talking about the launch series from Kershaw. I think they're on launch 19 now. And everyone in the room was like, well, what's a launch 12? What is it? Do you even know what it looks like? And I was
I bet it's a Switchblade.
That's all you know. That's all you get to know. And that's not to criticize them. It's just as you start tacking things on this thing that already exists, it just gets longer and longer. And you're like, oh, dang, right. What do we do now? So I get it.
Well, I think we have enough people here to kick it off officially. Welcome to FFIB. I am Jason, and that is Tom. We are Finger Flicked in Box. We're joined by Ben Petersen of KNAFS.com. You might know Ben from his wonderful content on YouTube, on Instagram. Previously, in a previous life, found you on the the Blade HQ channel, where you probably shaped lots of hearts and minds about knives. What's it like to be one of the godfathers of Instagram and YouTube knife celebrity fame?
Oh, that feels so generous in terms of the title. I don't know that I am, Jason. You got to remember, when I started, Gavco, Tough Thumbs, Jay Davis, some of these old names, even Nut & Fancy, I kind of looked at what people were doing and I'm like, well, Blade HQ could do that. Why not, right? And so, I don't know, there were a lot of people that I watched a lot of. I watched a ton of Gavco just to learn, what is a pivot? What is what's a pocket clip? What kind of pocket clip, right? So, I don't know. I think standing on the shoulders of giants is a good way to look at it, in my opinion.
When Tom and I started the Millie Club, we had a question. When you joined the group, you had to answer the questions. And one of the questions was, what's your favorite knife store? And when we started, I would say 45% of the applicants put Blade HQ. And after you left, it started dropping. And I think you were the driver of that. They're no longer the majority answer. So
that's kind. I had somebody walk up to me once and be like, wow, you've started such a great company. And I'm like, I just work here. And they're like, yeah, but you've started such a good company. And I'm like, no, I'm just an employee. And I think it was part of that, like just having such an impact on the community, but also like not having any sort of long-term plan there. I was like, I need to start my own thing. And that's kind of what KNAFS was born of. It's like this, there was just so much like inert potential that needed to be like realized. And it was like, I had hit the ceiling at Blade HQ and loved my experience there, but it was like, oh, it's time to move on. So I'm glad to hear that people enjoyed it. It was really fun.
How long ago did you start KNAFS then? When you started, because you started it part-time and now this is your full.
Yeah. I started,
right?
Yep. I started it in 2018. So I was actually still working at Blade HQ. Without going into like the juicy details, I kind of had like a rough summer at Blade HQ in 2018. And I got to fall and I'd had this idea for this. In fact, it's this side, this knife poster over here. I'd had this idea for a long time, and I kind of just like stopped working like 50, 60-hour weeks and started pouring the time into that poster. And so end of 2018, about November, I'd finished the poster and I was like, is it time to launch a business while I work for someone else? Or like what happens next? And so I sat down with my boss. I'm like, here's what I'm doing. Here's kind of what it looks like. It's a single product. I want to sell it exclusively through Blade HQ. So started KNAFS in 2018. The poster went live Christmas of 18. And then I left in August of 19. Went into corporate America for about 3 years and then took KNAFS full time.
And the NAF that is in the NAF poster is what originally became your first model, right?
No, I've actually never made it. I think it's ugly. It was the first knife I've ever drawn. But yeah, I've never made it because I designed it very specifically to have like a thumb stud and like jimping and like all of these features that you'd want on a poster knife, not necessarily a knife that you'd actually want in real life. So I've never, like, even now I look at it, I'm like, ew, it's kind of like crunchy. But that poster is really what launched the business. Like I think we had to print 2,500 units initially. And I was like, this is so much money because they were, I don't know, it was about a $3,000 PO. So my wife and I took savings and just like kind of kissed it goodbye. I was like, I hope this comes back.
Right.
And it did. And I think it was a really good proof of concept that I could do my own thing and that people would show up and be stoked about it. And like, I'm reading the comments over here, like P. Brian was like, Ben was the reason I bought the Wii Banter, which that's super cool. Like that was kind of the stuff that like I had cachet before I ever decided to do my own thing. I'd put a lot of time and effort into it. So that was a long answer to your question, Tom. I apologize.
Oh, no.
Seth Gilman says that Ben and Zach were the reason I met Jesper Voxnays at New York Custom Knife Show in 2018 after watching the Bible interview. The rest is history.
I think it's the Biblio, but we might have interviewed him about the Bible too.
Did you interview the Bible?
The very Bible, yes, the Holy One, indeed.
Wow.
It's a big event.
It's pretty good.
I love it.
I remember the poster coming out, and it was super cool because for one thing, I don't know, just the aesthetic of it was fantastic. I love the look of it. It reminds me of some sort of like Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner kind of evil genius design, but also, I don't know, and like maybe like architectural too. And then not long after that, you partnered with Vero Engineering, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Was that maybe your second or third project that came along?
That would have been probably like the 6th or 7th project because we did a black poster, we did a mouse pad. So I didn't do anything for like 8 or 9 months till I quit at Blade HQ. Actually, so I quit at Blade HQ in August of 2019. And then we came out with like a poster, a mouse pad, just kind of accessories. And then in 2020, January 20, is when we launched the Banter. So like literally I quit at Blade HQ, announced it publicly. And I'd already talked to Wii and Civivi previously. They were like, hey, I kind of floated it out there. I was like, could I design a knife for you? literally like as soon as I made it public that I was leaving, they were like emailing me like, we're ready, let's go. I was like, cool, that's amazing. So 2019 was kind of a like transition year. And then 2020 launched the Banter, and then took the business full time in 2022. So yeah, just 3 years in corporate America. It was all I could stand. So
I really have a lot of respect for your first offering, the Banter.
Thank
it was
you.
a fantastic knife. Whether you had big hands or little hands, whether you were an EDC or a collector, you could justify owning one. And it was a very approachable design. And then also, I can tell you spent a lot of time thinking about the price point. What was it that made you decide to go at that level and not go with something hyper premium? Like you could have gone mid tech, you could have gone, handmade, and you chose to go in. If I remember right, they were $98, weren't they, or $89 somewhere?
108 is what they launched at. Yeah,
it's a really aggressive price. So what
was
it?
It was. I think I've got one here. Let me see. I got all sorts of baby Banters, but no Banters. Yeah, so my thought process behind that, it was a little bit of a weird. I kind of twisted Wee's arm just a little bit, Wee Knife's arm, because I wanted to design a Wee knife for them that was affordable. They'd played in this really high-end market, and they'd had some really cool, interesting designs. But a lot of times I sort of felt like the designs were so out there. And this is before Isham days too. This is right about the period. Well, no, this was during Isham days, where they had just this wild stuff. And so like, if you liked Wee knives, you had to get something that was like titanium and wild. Like those were the classifications, and high end. And I was like, guys, why don't you make something in S35 VN with a G10 handle and 2.9-inch blade and a deep carry pocket clip? Because I'd seen all this data for years that was like, this will sell. Like I'd sat there at Blade HQ and literally watched that every single day. Like those are the stats, make it like that. And so I designed it, and they were like, this is kind of more of a Civivi knife, but it would have to be in like Nitro V or something. And I'm like, no, it wants to be S35. Trust me. And they did, which I'm really, really grateful for. And I think they're grateful that they trusted me too, because it's done remarkably well. The Banter series did great. The Baby Banter has done phenomenally. The Sendy that we released this year has done great. So I wanted to just design something that I wanted. Like there were elements. In fact, let me pull a Baby Banter out here. Like this is the Spyderco Club, but I've been super inspired by Spyderco over the years. But my complaint with Spyderco is, and I realized this a couple years in the industry, you look at a Dragonfly and the amount of space it takes up in pocket this direction because of the, I don't know what you call the thumb hole nose that comes with it, is actually pretty substantial.
Yes.
If you're carrying a pair of 2 or a pair of 3, like it takes up a lot of like space in your pocket. So I carry a multi-tool in the bottom of my pocket. So when I reach in, I was always constantly like fighting the nose of the Spyderco. But when you look at like a Baby Banter, it just takes up less space in your pocket. And it's not much, but it just has a little bit thinner profile overall. So I would say that like for me, Spyderco has been a huge inspiration because I didn't like the thumb hole. And so a lot of my stuff has thumb studs because it's almost like take a Dragonfly, change the lines a little bit, give it a deep carry clip, not a wire clip, and then change the blade shape to something I want. So it's like, I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as a new idea. It's like, it's got to have a handle. It's got to have a blade. How do you kind of kaleidoscope the idea into something that you want? And so that's kind of where the Banter came from, is like watching all these stats over and over and over and saying, okay, how do you smash those things together in a way that is interesting in a new way, is the way I'd put it.
Sure.
Your design aesthetic is very fun. I would say it's very friendly. It's very like, it's non-threatening. And I like that about it. It looks like a knife you just pick up and use and not have to worry about it.
Thanks. And I think honestly, like part of that has to do with like, I'm not classically trained in design. My degree's in broadcast journalism, and in fact, I had this English class in college that was like, like a technical writing class, and one of them you had to make like this instruction manual on something. And at the time I was working at a car wash, waxing vehicles. And so like I was premium at waxing vehicles. And so I did this pamphlet on how to wax a vehicle. And it was like 10 pages of like waxing tutorial. And I got like a B- on it. I was so ticked because it took me like 4 weeks of like sitting there in Adobe Illustrator, like making this manual. And I'm still annoyed about the B- on the assignment, but that's probably like one of my most influential like courses that I took, because I learned how to use Adobe Illustrator. So like the entire poster, Adobe Illustrator, just being able to navigate that program in a way that I can take things that are in here and put them on paper has been critical for what I do, because I'm not a CAD designer. I'm not sitting there dictating the millimeters and the 100,000 of where things go. It's like, no, this is a concept up here. And then I'm going to work with the engineers in this level to make the thing happen. I think in some ways, I've learned a little bit this year about product line management. I'm probably more of a product line manager than like a hardcore like industrial designer or designer. Like I have colors and blade shapes and all of these different things that I can smash together. But if you're like, hey, Ben, draw a knife right now, I'll have to think about it. And I'm going to read Amazon reviews for a week, and I'm going to like look at YouTube comments for a week and then smash things together. Like, it's not like I just have 100 ideas sitting there ready to go. It's very much what is a need in the marketplace.
So if I quiz you on like stop pin diameters and detent ball depths, that doesn't drive you as much as thinking about the line card and the aesthetic of the brand and,
yes,
the tactile experience maybe of holding it.
Yes, exactly. And it takes all types, right? You got to have somebody who really cares about the depth of that detent ball. That guy's not me, but I can tell you if the detent ball is in the wrong spot, if it feels wrong, like there's something innate after handling thousands and thousands of knives that I can tell you if it's wrong or right. And I think especially as you grow in leadership, that is almost a special sauce, being able to say, yes, that's right, or something's not quite right there, and change it in these ways, right? So yeah, I would say that my skill set within knives is being able to see opportunities, get the basics of the opportunity ready to go, and then coaching somebody toward the finish line. So
I think that's it's absolutely necessary to the making of a really nice design that's approachable, that people want to buy. And it's missed a lot. We see a lot of guys in the industry, when you walk the show in Atlanta, you see a lot of knives that are technically well made, but they're either boring or they're not available in any interesting shapes, or it feels like a retread design. So it's not so easy to have that part. So I imagine when it came to the actual design of the knife, how much of a partnership did you feel from Weave? Were they pretty integral to the nuts and bolts part?
Yeah, I mean, critical. Like, I basically send them what we would call a tech pack, right? Like, I want a 2.9-inch blade that's 3/4 of an inch deep, G10 handle, and then they basically do so the way it works with the companies I work with, they will do a 2D line drawing from my line drawings that I've sent them. I would say like what I'm delivering is 3 degrees above a napkin sketch, right? Like it's got Pantones and it's got arrows and measurements and things like that, but really like it's not a knife, like in the purest sense of the thing. Like I'm not telling them exactly what it should be. Like a lot of times my knives will end up thicker than I originally intended, because by the time you get the mechanics and the liners and all of these things in there, it ends up thicker. Like that's part of the game. So they send me 2D line drawings. I approve the 2D, or we make changes to the 2D. Then they do 3D. They send me the 3D. I usually will 3D print it and assemble the knife to kind of get it in hand. And from there, once the 3D is approved, the hope is that we're 98% the way there by the time we approve 3D. The hope is that we're 90. I'm getting some feedback. That's better. There we go.
I think Tom's in. Tom, do you have your phone on?
I'm trying to cut some noise out of the background of my party that's going on in the next room over.
We love a party. Leave it
Is
in.
it a knife party?
It's a no knife allowed party. It's a little kid party.
Well, someday.
Yeah. So anyway, I get 3D models. I check them. I approve them. And then once the prototype comes in, the hope is we're only making little minor tweaks with the hope that they don't have to redo tooling, because once they've made a prototype, like tooling is pretty set. So
Yeah.
usually it's like, oh, let's rotate this 2 degrees this way, or let's change the laser engraving just a little bit, things like that. So I try to keep it as simple as possible while being high touch in the beginning and lower touch in the end.
So I'm noticing a trend right now where people are liking smaller and smaller knives. And earlier you were talking about the success of the Banter, and then you said the Baby was doing exceptional. So did that surprise you? Is it exceeding your expectations for the sales of the knife?
Jason, everything surprises me.
It all surprises.
It really does. And I don't know why that is. I think, I don't know, just the fact that things are working. Like,
right.
I saw some sales numbers, some unit volume sales numbers on this Baby Banter the other day for the last rolling 12. And obviously I can't share those numbers, but it blew my mind, guys. It blew my mind. Like, I designed this thinking like, yeah, there'll maybe be 1,000 people that like this. And it's like, no, there are many thousands of people that like this particular color combination. And I don't think that's just me. Like, I think, again, it's sort of this product line management, right? Like, when I work with We and Civivi, I'm putting an interesting idea into a system that already exists. So they do a great job getting the listings up on Amazon and getting it into dealers and things like that. So it always surprises me, I guess is what I would say. And I don't say that to be like overly humble. It blows my mind. We're doing a Kickstarter right now, and it's the Lander 4 fixed blade. It's this one right here. And it's literally like a 2 3/4 inch fixed blade, everyday carry fixed blade. Like, it's got a brass bead on it, micarta. Like, it's cool. But I don't like, we've raised like $120,000 for this thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And like, that to me like blows my mind. Like, who are these people and why do they keep saying go for it? You know, like, it's really humbling and cool to me, but it's
right.
always surprising. And if you talk to the team at KNAFS, they're like, Ben, why don't you believe this will work? And I'm like, I don't know, guys. Like, our one of our guys is like, only the paranoid survive. And that's me. I'm like, of course it's not going to work. And then I'm pleasantly surprised when it does, but I should probably have more faith in the ideas that I create. So I don't know.
I don't know. Evidently you have your finger on the pulse of what people like. And it had to have come from your time at Blade HQ and all the thousands and thousands of knife users that you talk to, that you got to know maybe at the shows or whatever. And so you have a very informed viewpoint that allows you to really touch it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, because I'll have like a single comment. Somebody, I don't even know where, somebody on YouTube a month or so ago was like, all your knives are really like, they're drop points and they're all kind of the same blade shape. This is a Lander 3. And they're all kind of like, you look at that, you look at a Baby Banter, they're all kind of that same drop pointy shape. And that's all well and good. But this guy was like, why don't you make anything that actually is pokey? And I was like, good point. Good point. And it's like a single data point, but literally like I'm working on the 2025, 26 lines. And there's a lot of pokey coming out because some guy was like, you don't make anything pokey. I'm like, I'll show you I don't make pokey. Watch this. But like, I don't know that I have, like, it's little data points like that from all over that help me understand like, oh, this is working and this isn't. And a lot of times it's not en masse, but it's one person that will say something that's like, oh yeah, that resonates with me. And I think other people are thinking the same thing. So I'll kind of bring it in.
Really illustrates, like, there's there's an opportunity there that you're not harnessing currently that you could touch and you could take advantage of. And there's a whole nother market segment out there that's waiting for a drop point, or they're waiting for a Bowie blade, or they're waiting for something that's a little more pokey, stiletto. So that's pretty funny.
Yep. Tom, I think you were muted at some point. You were talking and I missed it.
I was muted. No, I was about to say, when you're talking about how you've raised so much money, it really is a testament to how you found this price point that existed in some capacity, but it didn't have the fun behind it. It didn't have the cool factor behind it. Like, there's $100 knives, and there's lots of great $100 knives, but you have found, I was looking at your website earlier and looking at the range of costs. Like, you have some knives made with less expensive steels, some knives with more expensive steels. So it really caters to a fairly broad section of the market, especially at that lower price point, that people can get several of them, and then they can go to your website, and not only can they get a knife, they can buy scales, and they can buy different color hardware and clips and all that stuff. And it's a different experience than I've really seen any other manufacturer offer.
Thank you. That's very kind. And it's funny because we've kind of played in the $50 to $130 range, except for the Lulu, and I'll talk about that. Somebody asked about that in a minute, but it's interesting because I work with the young men at church, and they'll come into the knife shop. I try to get them there with their parents, which seems like the best thing to do. But they'll show up and they'll be like, "Ben, we want to buy something," and I'm like, "It's $45," and they're like, "Oh," and I realize, like, we don't have a lot of, like, if you're a typical non-knifey knife buyer, we don't have anything in your price range, $25 to $30. So we're actually working on Lander 5 that will be a pretty inexpensive knife, 8CR 14 MOV knife, $25 frame lock, right? Stainless steel frame lock. And I don't know that knife people are going to be super stoked about that, but I don't care, because the neighborhood kid keeps coming in the store and bugging me for a $25 knife, and I want him to shut up, in the nicest way possible. Like, I want to send him home with that, with his parents' permission, of course. But I think that's part of what I want to do. Is I don't see KNAFS as like a Benchmade that only makes $150+ knives. I think, having worked at CRKT, I saw how they do things. There are things that I don't love about their quality and kind of their process. Like, I always felt like they could have upped their quality a bit, but they had a knife for everybody. I mean, you could buy one in the $25 price point, $75, $300 if you wanted. And so I kind of saw that. I mean, Spyderco's the same way. Like, how much is a Tenacious now? 35, 40?
Well, now or back in the day? Because back in the day, that was a sweet $36 knife. But
they're closer to 80 now.
Are they really?
Yeah. Oh, if you go into the bird line, you can get into the 40s, but you have to go to the bird line.
Wow, that's remarkable. So like your bottom of the barrel 8CR Tenacious, $80. Wow.
Yeah, they did an S35 VN Tenacious, and it was $139.
Wow, that's remarkable. Yeah. Okay, so I haven't followed the game as closely as I used to, but that's incredible. That blows my mind.
With the M4 blade, and it's not a budget knife anymore, but it's still like, it will always forever be the Tenacious that used to be on Amazon. You could buy one for $36, but so anyone that's been around for long enough to remember that, it's kind of like, you guys are buying a Tenacious for $140 or whatever it is now, is kind of astounding.
Yeah,
that is to me. I mean, I would always recommend that one when somebody would say, "Hey, I don't want like a CRKT Squid, but what's like higher than that?" And I'd be like, you need to look at the Tenacious or Persistence. Like, that was kind of the middle. But I mean, look at that. To me, like, that's a hole in the market, right? Like, personally, I don't have a lot of love for the bird line. I think the holes look funky. And that's just an aesthetic thing more than anything. Like, materials, whatever, I can't get past the way it looks.
Yes.
But I love the fact that there's a hole in the market. I get excited about that stuff, right? And that's, so for me, I say, cool, how can we make a knife that this 12, 13-year-old can mow a couple lawns and be able to afford.
You know, Ben, I come from the music instrument business. I was in that for a long time. And that industry is really good about collecting data on itself to understand the demographics of the customers and the consumers and the products that sell. And I remember some friends and I started a company where we were going to make a very high-end elite guitar amplifier. And it was going to be ultra premium, handmade, very expensive, 4-digit prices. And I got the manual from the trade association over the whole industry, and I thumbed through it, and something like 80% of the market was 12 to 18-year-olds, and the average selling price of the average guitar was $299. And I showed it to my friends that I started the company with, and we were just like, oh well, maybe we need to reevaluate. Like we had shot so astronomically high, and it was really cool, and everybody liked it, but in the end, like if it wasn't slime green and $299, we probably weren't going to sell it. So, you know, I admire you for knowing your market and realizing like there's a whole bunch of kids out there with $40 and they'd love to buy a knife, $30, and grandma gives them some money for Christmas, and they can come and pick up one of your knives, and it's sort of a gateway knife.
Yeah, and the reality is like we need good gateway knives in this industry, right? Like I see some. What's that?
It's a good name for it.
Yeah. Slime green gateway knives is what we can call it. But we need that, because if we don't, like most people are not going to make the jump from a $0 knife to a $90 knife. They just don't see the value in that. And you've got to give them an option to buy something inexpensive before they're going to buy something expensive. And man, it feels like gas station knives are getting worse and worse. I saw one the other day that was like a Mossberg shotgun kind of knife sort of thing. And the guy carrying it, like, bless his heart, it's like missing a screw and the frame is all wonky. And I gave him a Lander one. I'm like, you need this more than I do. It's yours. So not to be condescending, I think you have to have an entry point into knives. And I think KNAFS kind of fills that hole a little bit. I don't know that we're perfect at it, but it gives people an opportunity to say, that's where I started. And then if you want to go spend $400 on a Benchmade Anthem in titanium or whatever is cool, go for it, So.
I spent at least 7-8 years collecting things where nothing I had was over $100. I had a whole box of knives. And I go on Amazon and I go, what is CRKT and Kershaw? And I'm just going to buy them all. And that was great. But all it did is it grew the passion. And eventually you find where you love and move up market or not. So obviously it's Spyderco Group, and I'm still really into Spyderco. But I don't feel like there's necessarily you have to move up and do something else. Like I have more expensive knives. But I like what I like, and there's nothing wrong with not having to have the most expensive knife on the market. Yeah.
Well, Bill Booth here says nothing wrong with slime green and camo carbon jungle wick, right? And there's not, like that's where you start, and maybe that's where you end too. And
but Bill kind of has a problem. Bill buys 4 or 5 knives a week, so we got to take what Bill says with a grain of salt. Sorry, Bill.
I love it.
Well, the group is being taken over, as you may have noticed, with the new grail of grails. That maybe I'm trying to be very positive about the Walmart special knife, the Ozark Trail orange.
Tom, are you on the trail?
Yep, I'm not on the trail yet, but
no.
I'm
on the trail. I bought one on Thursday. I've got one.
Oh man, what is your honest opinion of the Ozark Trail?
I don't think there's a better $9.97 under $10 knife out there. It blows my mind. Like, it genuinely blows my mind. I think I saw Max Level EDC Dom. He had to tighten the pivot a little bit. Ours was the same. We tightened the pivot up just a little bit, got rid of the lock rock. But I mean, for $10, D2 steel, and it's like a plastic handle. The plastic feels pretty cheap, to be honest. Like, it's not an FRN. It definitely feels like just injection molded plastic. But the fact, like, I'm looking at that thing going like, how did anybody make any money on this thing.
Well, can you agree that it's not likely that that factory took steel from Crucible and then put it on a boat and took it all the way across to China and then made a knife for about 38 cents so they could sell it to Walmart for $1.70. So Walmart could sell it to you for 10. It probably didn't happen. It's probably not D2, isn't that true? We have to believe it because it's on the package. I mean, the package says so, and no one ever lies in marketing or retail.
I haven't watched the video yet, but Outpost 76 did a steel test on it. I did see that, so I might have to watch that and find out.
Well, what were the results? I'm curious.
I'll have to watch the video. I saw it pop up in my feed earlier today.
Does he have a $200,000 spectrometer for testing the steel alloy to know what it's in it?
He tests a lot of steels.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah,
so we might.
I'm really skeptical of the whole thing. I don't see how you can manufacture it for under $1 and do all the things that you think it's going to do. I think you're gonna find out that it's not worth $10 when you buy it. But I haven't played with one yet. I have an $8 one here, and I can tell you that it's a dangerous knife. I would never choose to cut something with it.
I've carried it for all of about 3 hours in my pocket. It brought no joy. I can report on the joy factor. But at the same time, like, it's remarkable to me. And I saw some comments today in the Millie Club, people saying, hey, it's a knockoff bug out. It's a,
yeah. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's a clone. I really don't. Like, a clone to me is I took A and reproduced A. What they did is they took A, clearly took a bug out, and reproduced AB, right? Like, it's definitely a B in terms of like what it is. But you can absolutely tell it's inspired by a bug out. Like, no doubt about it. I mean, even down to where the lanyard hole is on the back and that sort of thing. But I mean, somebody showed me a Vosteed knife the other day that looks a lot like a baby banter. It's probably too close for comfort, and I'm not trying to call them out. Like, to me, it's like an A.5, not a B. But at the same time, like, it's not an A. It's an A.5. So I think that's everywhere, and I'll be the first to admit, like, I looked at the Spyderco Dragonfly when I was designing the baby banter, and you can see there are pieces of inspiration in there. But I think this is a definite A, and this is a definite B. I would put the Ozark Trail at an A.5. Not quite.
I don't see those two knives as being similar, other than they have pivots and blades. When you hold them up, they don't look similar to me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
It's yeah, I don't know. I think that if it had a butterfly on it, and if they were selling it as if it were a Benchmade, then that would obviously be a copyright violation, and it would be a total clone. But at some point, 98% is close enough to 100, and you have to say, well, maybe it is a clone. But that's really up to a judge, not for the three of us to decide, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Right. I do feel like, though, that like being an A.5 is like someone is going to get that knife, and then they're going to figure out that there's a knife that's similar to this knife that they like, but it's better, that they can get, and they can. So being inspired by something maybe gets them in the door that they wouldn't have explored in the first place. So I doubt that it's really going to affect Benchmade sales of the bug out. And in fact, it might have introduced a whole bunch of people to the idea of getting a knife, and even that knife, because they like it and they can get something better.
Yeah.
Mike's sitting on something that's bothered me for the last couple of days, where guys go, well, it's worth a lot more than $10. And I go, well, maybe it is, but just because it's worth $30 and you only paid 10 doesn't mean you should run out and buy one, because a lot of the guys buying them have 35 other knives in their life. And I just wonder, like, what are you going to do with it really? Like, I bought this one just to have social commentary about it when I do knife shows like this. But I certainly wouldn't carry it. I just don't think it's very safe when I look at the lock bar and I look at the nylon washers, and I just go, man, I could see this folding shut on my hand when I'm trying to cut something with it. So I don't know. I worry about that part. I just think a lot of people bought a $10 paperweight, but it's their money, right?
Oh, I definitely bought one out of just curiosity. I think there's a curiosity factor, right? Like, for less than a hamburger, you can go and and get a good hamburger. Let's qualify the hamburger, right?
Sure.
You can go and kind of have some chuckles with an online group right now. I saw the T-shirts in the group. We were talking about that before the show started. I want the Ozark Trail T-shirt. I think that is a remarkable idea. I would wear that on the show. I think that would be hilarious.
Oh, who thought of that? It was somebody in the group that came up with that.
It was Alan Yee, I think.
Yep, Alan Yee.
I need that shirt. If you can connect me with Alan, I'll pay money for that. I'm in.
He's a fairly productive member of the group. Alan is usually the number one contributor to the group. He only comments like 2,000 times per month.
Wow, that's remarkable. That's remarkable. I love the Millie group, by the way.
Guys really want to drive their participation to get to the top of the leaderboard. Tom fuels the fire by posting it at the end of the month.
That's amazing. It's remarkable what you guys have done with the group. I get a kick out of it. You know, I've got a coin for the group, and I feel like such a fringe member where I'm like a lurker most of the time. I open up Facebook. I spin through the Chris Reeve knives, the Vero group, the whatever groups, and yours always is just like tons of stuff going on. Like it's this river of content that I try to just like check in on, but it's so much. It's a remarkable group. It's well done.
I try. I'm taking a lot of grief right now for this Ozark Trail knife because I've got 30 people in my DMs that are mad that we're hosting it because they see it as not a Spyderco. It's a knockoff. No one cares. Who cares? It's a $10 piece of junk. Like, why is this assaulting my eyes and my ears? I want to get rid of it all. And then over here, there's a whole nother group of people that are like, hey man, don't be a fat cat rich man. You know, let the people have their say with the people's knife, right? And so you can't win for losing. I don't really like to stifle the conversation, but at the same time, it is too much. It's getting old. I'd like to go back to talking about good knives.
But that's my favorite part about the group is even if the subject isn't my favorite thing, the fact that so many people can be in on a conversation about something, whether it's something I care about or not, like Cobalt toolboxes from Lowe's for $10. or $20. That was the last cool thing. And people get really excited about it. And that's always been, I always pay a lot of attention to the group of like making sure people have fun. So I like when off-topic conversations happen. I like when people post about whenever any knife gets cool and gets a lot of heat behind it. I love seeing people post about it, and I want people to feel comfortable and not censoring the $10 Ozark Grail is kind of what we have to do to let, you know, everything else, like people not feel stifled by over strict rules in our group. We want the conversation to be there. We want the Millie Club to be people's home base where they can go and talk about their Ozark knife.
I love it. I think it's great. It's a good community.
Tom has a hoodie addiction, Ben. I don't know if you know this, but the man owns probably 30 premium hoodies. And today
we were talking about it. So we've been trying to get a hoodie done for like 2 years now, and we just settled on one the other day. And I'm saying settled, Tom, because you're not gonna like it. I have a hoodie. It's a next level. I can't remember the number on it, but it's like, you know, next level t-shirts that are like cotton poly 60-40 blend. They're a nice like t-shirt blank.
Okay.
Next level makes a hoodie, like a pullover hoodie, that doesn't have the elastic around the waist. And so it kind of rides like, it's just super comfy, but it's not like a high quality hoodie, like the highest of quality, but it's super comfy. And finally, like we looked at 4 or 5 different high quality ones and different things. I'm like, just get the next level one. I've got 2 of them. I love them. They're great. So it's on the way. I'll send it your way, Tom. You can judge it.
Okay. I like that.
Yes. I want the Ozark Trail knife shirt. I'll pay for it.
That's funny.
But yeah, I do have a hoodie addiction. It is my other thing. It's kind of what I moved on from knives to, but I enjoy them. The only downside is there's not the resale of it. Like knives, when I collected 400 Spydercos, I could sell them. Hoodies, when I get a hoodie, it's kind of mine unless I'm donating it. It's not something resellable, so I'm a little more careful now about like what I get. and it's gonna live with me. But
I wrote down the one you're wearing because it's a beautiful, like, I don't know if it's the model, sometimes you see something on the model and you're like, I need that. But that hoodie that you're wearing, I'm like, American Giant Carolina midweight. I've got it right here. I'm ready.
I highly suggest taking a look at it. It's nice just to have. It's fun whenever I talk about hoodies. Most people are like, you spent how much on a hoodie? And I'm like, you spent how much on a knife? Like, it's all a matter of perspective of what you're into is what you're into. And that's totally okay.
A lot of people wanting a KNAFS hoodie. It wouldn't be Ben Blue because it's a little loud. And the older I'm getting, like the less like royal blue I'm finding myself doing, because that was kind of my signature thing for a while. I think just as you get older, it's like royal blue's kind of loud. I find myself wearing a lot of gray, a lot of navy, like deep green. But yeah, I am finding that I spend more money on clothes now too, not out of like high fashion, but I'm like, if I walk into a store and this pair of pants fits, I will buy it. And like, if it's an $80 pair of pants and I like the way it fits and I'm going to wear it for the next 7-8 years, like, come on, let's amortize that. That's $10 a year. Like, that's nothing, right? And
yeah,
so
cost per wear is a big deal for me.
Yeah. Like this pair of shorts I'm wearing, I've probably had this pair of shorts like 5 or 6 years and I've like worn them out. And I'm at this point where it's like, okay, I can afford an $80 pair of whatever, and I will wear this into the ground. So I might experiment with an over $100 zip up, Tom.
I mean, it'll last, and you'll enjoy your time in it. Like, I sleep in a hoodie. It's just like being hugged all the time.
Yeah, but that's just it. Like when you're a poor college kid, like I have this poor college kid mentality still, where like, I don't know, I'd spend $25 on a pair of pants at like Ross on the discount rack that's like 2 sizes too big, and just like cinch them up and roll them up. Like that was like I've had a hard time like breaking that mentality as a human being adult. Like, but I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready for that over $100 hoodie.
I like it
because you use your stuff, So
yeah. I was going to my notes real quick. Before we move on too much into hoodies, KNAFS, how many people are working at KNAFS now?
Yeah, 9 people total, 7 full-time, 2 part-time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a little bit wild. We kind of like, so when I took it full-time, so my wife and I own it 50-50. We took it full-time in 2022 in the garage. And we launched our first Kickstarter, the Lander 1, and it did really well. And then it went into the market, and the market, like dealers bought it up. Like it was a huge surge in just like revenue and just like opportunity. And we're like hiring people into our garage, like trying to get like professional people to come work in our garage. We're like, we're a startup, we're cool. And it just wasn't flying. Like it was working, but it was like we were just overstretched on everything when it came to like who's doing what. And so I would almost say like we ended up at 9 employees based on sanity. It was like, okay, operations is breaking. My wife can't do it anymore. Like we must hire someone or die.
Yeah.
And that sounds dire, like as a company, like die as a company. Like we are either going to shut it down because it is mentally taking too many resources and I will go find a job, or we're going to hire somebody. And we have just played that game over and over and over until I feel like where we're at right now is a pretty good spot where we're like operating everybody in their roles. We don't have too many people, but we're also not crazy stressed. Sometimes we're crazy stressed when I need something done or whatever, but it's a little bit of a chaotic thing to grow a business. We hired a fractional CFO that does a whole bunch of money work for us, because one thing I've learned about myself is like, I'm pretty okay at finding ways to make money and finding ways to save money, but I'm not very good at spending money. It goes back to the $110 sweater, right? I'm very good at like hoarding it in and saying, okay, we'll divvy out a dime over here and a dime over here. But in reality, if you divvied out a quarter over here and $1 over there, like your life will be easier and you'll have more mental health. And so this fractional CFO has been really good for me. He'll be like, Ben, you have cash, spend it. Ben, you don't have cash, don't spend it. Okay, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So it's been a really interesting journey. I don't recommend it to anybody. I have people like, and I say that kind of joking. I have people probably every week that are like, I want to start a knife company. I'm like, yeah, do you want like ulcers and like your hair to fall out? Start a knife company. It'll be great. I think starting a company is one of the hardest things that anybody could ever do. It is like soul gut wrenching, hard to do. It is the only way I could put it. And I think I have a fresh new perspective on some of these bosses I've had in the past and some of the decisions they've made, because it wears on you in ways that you don't understand until you decide to climb that mountain. And it is a steep mountain. And I don't think I'm done climbing it either. Like, we've seen some cool things, but there's a long way to go. So.
What makes it hard? Is it trying to find traction? Like, you feel like you have lots of ideas, but you don't know how to get traction to kind of move forward? Is it more messaging, like just trying to help people understand what you're trying to do? What is it that's hard about it? Maybe finding order in the chaos where everything feels like a priority, but it's hard to execute. What do you think it is?
I think that last one is an important part of it. Like, deciding what is important is huge. Yeah. The thing that comes to mind is everything scales together. And what I mean by that is, if your marketing team is going out and doing a great job, well, now your ops team needs to reforecast, reorder. And now your accounting team needs to manage those orders and the cash and the bank account. And so, but what happens is those things work together and against each other, right? Like, even just a month ago, the ops team and the marketing team, it wasn't a kerfuffle. It was just like the ops team was frustrated that the marketing team hadn't communicated like a promo that was happening. So they end up with a whole bunch of orders they got to pick, pack, and ship. And marketing's like, yeah, we did great. And it's like, ops is like, I hate you guys, you know? and that's how this works, right? Like, everything has to scale together. And in the meantime, you have to replicate yourself. So if you, like in my case, I kind of started out as product development and marketing manager. And then my wife kind of started out as operations and accounting, finance. So that was kind of the two parts of our business. Well, she got overwhelmed, and we've got 4 kids in life. And so we hired an ops manager. And now it's like, okay, I'm managing that ops manager. And then we hire a marketing manager, and I've got to train that person. And then they leave because like the commute's too far and they're working in my cold garage and it sucks. And like, so everything has to scale together, and it's chaotic. It is not an easy road for anybody. And, you know, it's interesting because I spent a lot of time thinking about a lot of established companies in the industry. So Benchmade, 1987, Spyderco was like 86, Chris Reeve was like 85. We look at these companies and we're like, wow, they're establishments. It's cool. It's great. Like, somebody fought like tooth and nail, scraped, clawed, and bit their way to the top of a pile. And I have a ton of respect for that. And I think some people will try to put KNAFS in this category of like, oh, this is like a rising brand. It's like, Benchmade was started the year I was born, folks. Like, this is they've had a lot of time to figure out accounting, which is its own beast, and finance, which is another beast, and just-in-time inventory. So I have to remind myself, like, we'll get there or we won't, right? And both of those are, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I have to be realistic about this. Will take a long time. And it will be hard. And if I try to eat the whole elephant at once, I'm going to choke on it. So I don't know. That's a long answer. I don't even remember what the question was, but me.
Great answer. No, you're right. I'm working for a startup myself. We're in year 6, and we've had astronomical growth. And just this year, we've grown probably too fast, too quickly. And the way we like to put it is we took a bite of an elephant. Now we have to chew it, you know, and now we're recovering from that big growth period. So we lurched forward in size and grew 40%. and now we're 40% bigger. We're like, wow, operationally, this is a nightmare. And then our marketing team and our sales team is trying to keep up, and we keep out kicking the coverage. Marketing will lurch forward, and then ops will lurch forward, and we're trying to, adjust everything at the same time. It's just been really tough. And yeah, it's interesting.
It kind of feels we grew 35% year over year last year, which is remarkable growth.
Wow,
this year we're at 5% year over year, which is I'm actually stoked about. We're not going down. We're sustaining, and we're kind of catching our breath. But I think about it like the International Space Station, right? You launch something up into space, and it's a 6x6 place for astronauts to live, and then the Canadians hook something on it, and the Japanese, like it turns into this whole thing that you're able to actually live in and have space within, but you're going to be cramped for a while, and the journey to get to the space station is going to be rough, and it's going to melt your face off a little bit, so yeah.
Well, my very minor example of scaling and making sure and running a business, doing sharpening on my own is really interesting. Just trying to manage a flow of what comes in and out. Because when I get lazy and I stop sharpening and I stop advertising and I stop posting content on Instagram, then I stop getting knives. And if I stop getting knives, then I have no work, and then I can't advertise, then I can't market from them. And then it is a big cycle, and you got to, the whole ecosystem of keeping a business alive is there's just a lot of parts to it.
There are, and it's exhausting. I was having a conversation with Tony Scullenbreen today via text. He writes everyday commentary, and he just wrote an article, released it today, I think, about where the knife industry is headed. And his point was a lot of people get into a knife company and they think, I'm just going to do drops, or I'm just going to do this or that. And they kind of forget, like, this is a full-fledged business with like HR and accounting and bills and all these things. To me, knives they're a type of widget, right? You could be selling broomsticks, you could be selling, I don't know, micro machines or toy swords, whatever it is. You could be passionate about that thing all day long, but you better be passionate about the business side of it too, because if you're not, like, you're just going to hate it. And I would actually say that for me personally, I'm probably more passionate about the design and like the overall like management of the business than I am like the actual tool. And that might be heresy to some people listening, right? But I actually think it's a good combination because I can kind of detach from it. I'm not the guy running out to buy the new $300 drop. It's like, no, I'm very measured about what I do and how I do it. And so it kind of detaches me from the widget just a little bit to be able to not like drink my own Kool-Aid is the way I'd put it. And that's been effective for business, just being able to kind of take a bird's eye view from the mountaintop of what's going on,
Sure. It's not that easy to do. A lot of guys get really myopic when they're in that situation. They obsess to the point where they can't see it anymore. So,
yep.
Good on you.
Eric Mason asks, you opened up a KNAFS retail store. Yeah, we did. Kind of on accident. The city where we got our lease, I'd signed the lease and then I went to apply for the business permit, which, by the way, always apply for the business permit before you sign the lease. I learned that. This is good. But they were like, what? Tell us about your storefront. And I'm like, well, in the next 2 years or so, I'd like to kind of put a little storefront up. And they're like, well, you're zoned commercial and you need to have some sort of public facing something. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Oh, wow. And
I was like, well, I'm not ready for a storefront, but let's go. So we opened a storefront, and it's actually been really cool because people come in and they chat and they give good ideas and good feedback. And is it the most profitable thing? No, it makes up about 3 to 4% of our business, but so it's not much. But at the same time, it's like, as in some of our most excited customers, like we've got guys that will come in from like the Midwest and they're like, I was just driving through, and you're like, no, you were in Vegas. Like, that's 6 hours away, man. Like, so it's cool because you get to kind of shake hands with people and let them be a part of it. So.
Absolutely.
One thing I saw on your website when I was looking around earlier, you guys offer in-person knife sharpening at your shop, at your store. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that was part of it is, there's a shop up in Boise called Northwest Knives, and Aaron He's like in this perfect location. There's a Walmart and a Sportsman's Warehouse, and he sits right in the middle. And he has all this foot traffic, and a lot of his foot traffic comes from knife sharpening. And so I kind of took Aaron's model, and I was like, well, if we offer knife sharpening, this will be easy. Like, people will come from miles around. I didn't consider the Walmart and Sportsman's Warehouse. So honestly, like, we do great knife sharpening. Keith, that does it, used to be a welder. And so he's got a good eye, good hands. Like, he's excellent at it. But there's just not a lot of foot traffic. We're on a busy street that people don't really stop by on accident. And so, like, I don't know that we'll ever be like a true full-fledged storefront in the way that somebody might hope. But the people that drop in, they're like, dang, KNAFS, this is cool. So that's kind of heartwarming
Nice.
to me, I guess. So.
Well, Jason, you know what? I think
Before we move on, Tom, I thought I'd pull up the website here.
there we go.
Ben, I love that you've accessorized your own knife line. You have really intelligently designed tools and storage cases. The knife burrito is phenomenal.
The name's the best part, obviously.
Obviously, who doesn't love burritos?
Why wouldn't you love burritos?
No.
It's fun. I had a guy, it was at Blade West last year. He stopped by the booth and he was like, the thing I love about KNAFS is watching you build it from the ground up.
Absolutely.
Like, he's like, I'm watching you build it in real time. And I was like, yeah, you are. Like, yeah, because it's the same thing. Like, if you dive into a Benchmade, you've got 37 years of history to go back through. KNAFS has been around for 5.5 years, not even 6 years. And so it's all very new and fresh. And we kind of get to kind of like cut our own land and make our own trees and like plant our own trees and plant our own crops. And we get to make it whatever we want it to be. And that to me is super exciting. I love that act of creation a lot. And we've had a lot of fun with it. Like, nobody can tell us we can't make a Launchpad desk organizer and give it away for free if you want, right? You can download this and 3D print it for free.
Oh, wow.
Ben, I've been looking for one of these for months. Here it is, and it's $9.
It's $9. It's 3D printed, or if you have a 3D printer, Jason, you can literally download it for free $99.
Sadly,
yeah. But yeah, it's $9, but it fits our tools specifically. So it fits the Torx driver and so we kind of design, not that we don't want an open ecosystem, but we sort of are designing around the things that we've already made. So
I love it.
Thanks. Appreciate it. That's Keith right there. He's our sharpener. He runs our storefront, sharpens, and man, Keith does like all like the acid washing in the back. Like I'll be like, Keith, do you think we could do this? And he'd be like, let me see. So it's fun.
I'll figure it out. Which is good. And I think that's maybe my favorite part about my job right now is it's like I can have harebrained ideas and there are people that are like, we'll sort this out. We'll figure out how to do it.
Nice.
Looks like Mike Jimmy's excited for the Lander 4.
I love it, man. In fact, today we got prototypes on that guy, a little sheep's foot version in black.
Cool.
So a lot of people have asked for different blade shapes. And so kind of, again, my traditional drop point is the main model, but we got looking at it and we were like, well, heck, we got to hit an MOQ anyway. Let's throw a sheep's foot on there. So
yeah, sheep it.
So that's just to plug it for half a second. This thing ends in 4 days on Kickstarter. So we do all sorts of stupid stuff on Kickstarter. We're doing, if you buy it on Kickstarter and back it, they'll come out in January, but we're shipping them with corn scales, 3D printed scales that look like corn. Again, like
that's what I think is so cool is the fun factor is not matched elsewhere. The fun.
Well, it's almost like there's not an adult in the room to be like, guys, that's a terrible idea. We're like, corn scales, let's go. And everyone's like, let's go. And it's like, I don't know, if you're Eric Glesser, Sal's probably sitting there going like, no, we don't do corn scales. And I'm like, it's just me. Like at my shop, it's like there's no Sal Glesser, there's no like sage, there's no adult to be there and say like, no, that's a terrible idea. And so like we throw space kitties on the sides of things, and like it's really absurd and silly because nobody said we couldn't. Which
Sal Glesser greenlit the pochies, so he'd probably be okay with corn scales.
That's fair. That is fair.
Yeah. If you can make
dodo,
a knife, you can make a corn knife.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us about the Lulu. We got some Lulu talk earlier.
Yeah, so this is the Lulu. So I'm how many years? 5 years into designing knives. Most of my knives have been made overseas. So primarily in China. I've got one from MKM coming out of Italy at this point, but I hadn't made a knife in the US. I hadn't designed one and had it made. So the Lulu was sort of this challenge to see if we could make something in the US end to end the very best we could. So we partnered. White River is the OEM on this one. It's 2.9-inch blade, Scandi grind with a micro bevel on it. And I basically wanted it as like a camp knife, like a whittling knife. I love to whittle when I go camping. I love to sit there for hours. And so it kind of has this rounded contoured broomstick handle.
Yeah.
And it's done really well. Somebody asked earlier how it's done. It's USA made, so it's $230. It ain't cheap. But it's done really well by the standards of being USA made. So I think at this point we're on run 3, meaning we've sold probably about 800 units so far total. So it's not going to be a baby banter by unit volume by any means, but it's a really fun fixed blade. We make a USA made leather sheath on it. Comes with a Kydex one, but it's done great. And it's expensive, but I genuinely have not enjoyed another knife the way I've enjoyed this one in the last year. I took it to the Amazon with Joe Flowers in September and sat on a log in the Amazon jungle and whittled for like a week straight, and no hot spots, no nothing. I really
excellent. What I like about it is it looks like something my grandfather would carry. When you're a kid and you go camping with granddad, and he's the wise fur trapper kind of you just imagine he could survive out here for years, and he has that knife on his
yes. And in fact, I took the color scheme. I don't know how well you can see that, but
oh, nice.
So there's a G10 underlay with a micarta overlay, and so that's been done. It was probably done in the 60s a little bit with customs. I've seen it around, but I kind of took that idea from some of these custom knives. But my neighbor was actually the one that was like, dude, what if you did a Coleman green and red, kind of the old, the Coleman stoves that ran off of white gas that everybody had.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of where that color scheme came from. Was my neighbor was like, dude, you should totally do that Coleman green. I was like, yes, there's an emotion in that. So Jason, you saying that is exactly what I wanted. Is it should feel a little bit old, I guess, old soul, not vintage feeling, but this was made in a different era. So
Granddad Beatty was all about the Coleman stuff. He had the lamp and he had the stove and the camper. Oh man.
Yeah. I have one of those stoves from the 80s, USA made Coleman stove, and then I have a lantern as well. And I take it camping, and I'm like, why am I taking a lantern a white gas pump it up lantern camping? Yeah,
because it puts out 1 billion lumens. It's fantastic,
and it sounds cool when it's burning.
Sounds cool. Yeah,
and your kids can torch their fingers on the glass, right?
Yeah.
That's the real deal, right? But I think that there's something about that nostalgia and that, even the smell, there's a smell and there's a sound to it that, if you throw an LED lamp out on your camping table, it just doesn't have that same feeling. I think a lot about how things feel, and there's not, you can't zeros and one that in spreadsheet, right? It has to be something tangible. I look at the Sendi from Civivi. We put this texture on it it feels like a cedar plank, and there's story behind that. And these things should feel like something. a lot of knives at this point are just cranked out. And I keep saying it, but I'll keep beating this drum. It's easier than ever to make a knife. It's harder than ever to sell a knife. And I think it's harder than ever because a lot of things that are created do not have soul. They don't have like this feeling to them. And I don't know how you teach that. I don't know how you actually do it. I think it comes from conversations like this and reading the comments and being involved in it and thinking deeper about the things that we own and the things that we create. I try to inject feeling into the things I create. And I don't always get it right, but you can tell when we do. And I think that's maybe my favorite part about creating is when you grab something and you're like, this is right. And it's stupid stuff. Like we just got these prototypes in and the paracord on the ends of this is wrong. It's like a nylon instead of like a true paracord.
Sure.
And I'm not saying I'm some sort of sage for knowing that, but like I can tell you that there's no warmth to the nylon. And for some reason, paracord has a warmth to it, like a true paracord. Yes. And so we've got to change that. And it's little things like that I think are what we're creating at KNAFS, and what I'm doing with this weird knife stuff I do is like creating things that people are excited about long term. So I enjoy it. I don't think I ever would have like thrown a dart at a map and said knives, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I get such a kick out of it in a way that I can't see myself doing anything else, frankly. Like I'm like, what else would I do? And I'm like, no, I like this. This is fun. So.
You're obviously good at it. You obviously understand the market, and you have tapped into the pulse of what people want in a product. And now at this point, they trust you, and you launch things and people jump in, right? So
they do, which I'm grateful for.
Just Kickstarter is a testament to that.
Yeah, I'm grateful for every time it blows my mind. I just, it's a lot of gratitude for these people that are like, yeah, I'll support that idea. Like it's humbling is the only way to put it. So.
Well, Ben, thank you for joining us. I know you got to get some kids to put to bed, so can't keep you any longer. We would keep you longer, but we can't.
Thank you.
I appreciate every moment that you've been on here. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the invite. Thank you so much.
Well, Ben, we'll see you next time. Tom, thanks for joining me. I'm glad to be here.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks.
Take care.